Once we all right, good evening, Zoeglossia friends and community. My name is Saleem Hue Penny. I'm the 2021 to 22 Poetry Coalition Fellow, and I have the honor of welcoming you here tonight. This is our first of 3 public readings in the 2022 Zoeglossia retreat. And before we get started, before we go further, I wanted to make sure that we're meeting accessibility needs. We have CART, we also have ASL. If there's another need that is not being met, if you could drop it in the chat, you can use the host and panelist option. If the chat isn't accessible, you can do the little raise hand item, and we can call that way. But we just want to make sure that we're being as accessible as possible. So I'll take a moment and make sure that we give enough time for people to chime in. Okay, all right, great. And if needs arise during this, then please let us know. So I'm gonna go ahead and officially kick us off. So by way of a visual description, I am a Black man with glasses, a right side cochlear implant, handlebar mustache, pink shirt layered underneath West African print shirt. Behind me is the only quiet empty room in our house, white wall, a bed that's made up, and a door that I keep closing, but I have a feeling it's children are opening it. So tonight we have 2 of our faculty will be reading, and even more, I shouldn't say even more, but as exciting, perhaps I'll say, are 6 of our fellows. And when each fellow comes up on deck, I'll share their bio. And for accessibility, we have each poem saved as a PDF in a Google Drive. So the link to that file will be dropped in the chat. So if you prefer to read it visually and not have to only rely on the captioning or ASL, then we invite you to use that option. And I'm pretty sure that's it for housekeeping. I will let poets know when they're kind of up on deck. And I want to start off kind of framing a little bit of our evening with a quote. When I finish the quote, Carol, you'll be up next, and Arianna, you will be on deck. So this quote really stuck with me. It's in a recent conversation on the Poetry Foundation podcast with Susie Garcia and Kay Ulanday Barrett, one of our faculty for this year, had this piece of conversation. I'm gonna lay down now, like so many Zoom calls. I'm like, all right, friends, like I'm spooning out now. So here's the ice pack. And that's our whole realities. It brings the work to a better place. Now we're working in Zoom and we're seeing parents chase their kids or the cat peeing on the rug. There's more beyond this window. So for me, yeah, I feel like crip ecologies, we have to recognize the whole, not just the small soundbite of what we're supposed to be. But who are we? And who we are is important in the now. And we can imagine and become more quote unquote authentic in our futures. We can have a crip futurity in a way that's thoughtful. All right, with that, it gives me the pleasure to welcome our first poet, Carol Dorf. Carol Dorf's poetry has been published in 3 chapbooks and in journals that include Unlikely Stories, Great Weather for Media, About Place, Slipstream, The Mom Egg, Sin Fronteras, the Journal of Humanistic Mathematics, Scientific American, and Maintenance. Carol is founding poetry editor of Talking, Writing, and Taught Math in Berkeley. Please welcome, with any snaps, any emojis, any hand claps, please welcome Carol.
Hey guys, the poem I'm reading, we had to talk about lyric versus narrative. The poem I'm reading is not a narrative poem. It's in sections, and I'll try to remember to pause between sections. And it will be appearing in the next new Great Weather for Media. And the title is And When Stars. Again with the wings, when angels swoop down, there is no predicting what life they are carrying us to. One liminal, two-limbed against the darkening sky, the birthing shock and what sounds match that risk. Thank God we rarely remember pain. A certain upward gaze, as though stars were personal signs of optimism. Did you know that my mother wanted to move to the village, live in a small apartment, close the door, sketch a solitary life? This morning, the water was warm, or actually the same as usual. The air was warm. In the lane next to mine, a woman swam butterfly. I moved through that thicker medium, reminding my knees to bend, that everything was okay when immersed. A crow watched from the fence. In confinement, you desire windows, accept even a singular view to escape from. Contemplating the rattan chair someone else bought for this room, provisional. You nearly missed the Anna's hummingbird, absorbed as you were in fear of the bees, or maybe they were hornets. And there is always a phone. Fear, a stone I conceal from you. Or is it me? Gray-green, unpolished, no shine. If I said, this is your heartstone, what would you give me? Name 3 things you crave, and I will read your fortune with more precision than I ever did from tea leaves. Something awful happens there, and I don't want to know about it. They say that when flight proves possible, all the lost will take off with the birds, bones humming with other versions of their stories. Escapism is vice, not virtue. Escape fills a suitcase.
Thank you so much, Carol. If everyone could please clap it up, snap it up, emojis, comments for Carol. Thank you so much. Arianna Monet is next, and Elizabeth, afterwards, you are up on deck. Arianna Monet, she, they, is a queer Black poet, strawberry ice cream enthusiast, and former member of the 2019 Boston Poetry Slam team. Their work can be found in What Are Birds Journal, Freeze Ray Poetry, and elsewhere. Please join me in welcoming Arianna.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, so my visual description, I am a dark-skinned Black femme with shoulder-length dark curly hair that has a bit of an auburn layer underneath, although I don't think it's visible in this lighting. I am wearing golden clear glasses and a white button down with a blue flower print under a blue blazer. So this poem, I don't know how many of y'all have watched She-Ra, but I watched, I watched all of it during the pandemic. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's a character named Glimmer. Her mom's immortal. She's never been sick before. And there's a plot point where something happens to her powers and she gets sick for the first time. And when I first got my traumatic brain injury, I had a hard time piecing poems together. And so what I started doing was looking at form as a kind of template for that. And so this is a sonnet, because giving myself that kind of externally imposed structure really helped me figure out how to relearn how to put a poem together. I'm rewatching the She-Ra episode where Glimmer gets sick for the first time. and I keep mistaking the screen for a mirror, by which I mean I too with once adolescent and unconquerable, purple hair, a body unmarked by pain. Then the bright unholiness of onset. She screams, glitches into crimson static. In the right light, even pain can sparkle. Blood cells glinting into oblivion, flicker of agony, scarlet against the ego, incandescence of a body as it burns itself undone. If I am to live this way, neurons blazing, my fists clenched proudly against a whimper, let me at least malfunction in a way that shines. Thank you.
Thank you for shining. I felt that glow way over here, and it's the Midwest, so we don't always get light. So thank you for adding to that. This is all artificial light around me, so I felt real light coming from you. Thank you so much. Next up, we have, okay, great. Somebody said I am deceased, and I literally was like, wait, there's a ghost on the nice. We have Elizabeth next, and Jason is on deck. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Meade. Elizabeth Meade is a poet with cerebral palsy living in Asheville, North Carolina. She is working on the manuscript for her first book of poems. Please welcome Elizabeth.
Hello, glad to be here. I am a light brown skinned woman with short curly black hair wearing a pink t-shirt. Behind me are several iron Haitian sculptures on a white wall. Can everyone hear me okay? That can hear? All right, great. This poem is called Love Yourself. When your hands are shaking, when your whole world has dropped off its axis, leaving you spinning in the outer space of grief, when your knees collapse like winter boughs breaking, love yourself. When your inner child cries out, please, please, because the dreams it cherished are being ignored and their arms aren't long enough to reach you, love yourself. Cradle them gently, allow them to cry. Hear Earth's heartbeat softly echo, I am, I am, I am. Know that you are the only one who can reach you through lifelong layers of sorrow, anger, and guilt. Wait up with that child until you see pinpricks of hope, that beautiful, bright sunshine. Realize that love is your oxygen. Stand on the shore of tomorrow. Take deep breaths. Let love fill you as the wind whispers, you are, you are, you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, I feel it. If y'all need to come off mute for a second and cheer, like, I'm not opposed to that. This is a reading. This is, you know what I'm saying? So if you need to come off and just snap it up, clap it up.
I'm down.
I'm a fan.
So great.
All right. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Jason Irwin, you are next. And DJ, you will be on deck after Jason.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks so much. I was going to introduce you because you deserve an introduction. Jason Irwin is the author of 3 poetry collections. He lives with his wife, Jen, in Pittsburgh. Please welcome Jason.
Great reading. I'm really enjoying this day. I am a white man of 50, sitting in the back room of my apartment in Pittsburgh with a painting of my great-grandfather behind me. And my poem is called Chopin's Heart. A brief apocalypse has taken possession of my person. The streets are full of melancholy. Yesterday, I fell asleep on the bus. The sound of someone crying woke me. Was it the woman slumped in her seat like a bag of laundry? Or my mother, 40 years ago, the night Elvis died, and I held her hand as she trembled at the kitchen table? In the Times this morning, a story about Chopin's heart, found submerged in a brown liquid, thought to be cognac. On his deathbed, Chopin asked that his heart be cut out and returned to his beloved Warsaw. Imagine if our own hearts could be extracted and one day discovered, swaddled like unholy relics. The first known depiction of the heart as a symbol of romantic love was found in a 13th century French manuscript, where a kneeling lover offers his heart to a damsel. In a tiny box marked "My Tragedy," Chopin kept letters from his lover, Maria Wodinska, who refused to marry him because of his lifelong ill health. Researchers found Chopin's heart to be massively enlarged and floppy, and covered in a white substance that gave it a frosted appearance. In the dim glow of my apartment, I listened to Elvis's early recordings. Obsessed with death, he visited funeral homes late at night to stare at the bodies. A child prodigy and leading symbol of the Romantic era, Chopin feared being buried alive. He often had vivid dreams of damned creatures inside his piano. Outside my window, the sun has fallen behind the rooftops on Highland Avenue. I feel blood pulse through my veins, feel my heart thump and flutter like a trapped bird. Each night, I cut it out and place it in a tiny box under my bed, somewhere safe, lest I wake suddenly in the pitch dark with only the dank earth for comfort. Thank you.
Ooh, woo. Jason. Woo. This night I'm in. We should have doubled the length of this reading so everyone was dropping 2 poems. So we might have to just we'll see. Oh, thank you so much, Jason. Next up we have DJ Savarese. DJ is an artful activist, co-producer of the documentary Deej, Inclusion Shouldn't Be a Lottery, author of A Doorknob for the Eye, and co-author of Studies in Brotherly Love. Please join me in welcoming DJ.
Hi, everyone. I'm DJ Savarese. I'm the white male in my 20s with wavy reddish-brown hair, glasses, and a goatee. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and sitting on a couch in front of a brown, cream, and blue stained glass window. The artwork you're hopefully seeing on the screen, by autistic David Vogel, started the conversation that my poem continues.
Vogels. Drawing by autist David Dorf, age 10, 2008. By DJ Savarese. After Eduardo Corral. 1. Who needs water with so many wings? 2. A Dewey Decimal System for feathers. 3. The librarian in the tree says quiet. 4. I felt an intimacy with birds bordering on frenzy that must accompany my steps through life. John James Audubon. 5. Birdship, a Malthusian catastrophe. 6. To go out on a limb. 7. I would like to be a pelican, I think, because penguins are much too theological. 8. With my eyes, I scoop fish from the air. 9. Must love always be a form of taxidermy? 10. Audubon tied yarn to the legs of the eastern phoebe and thereby discovered that it nested in the same place every year. 11. Ornithologists call this bird banding. 12. I call it autism, or as the experts like to say dismissively, perseveration. 13. Let us persevere with detail. 14. The yellow beak, the red beak, the brown beak, the black beak. 15. With my eyes, I scoop fish from the air. 16. The world is not a zoo. 17. Nor is it an aviary. 18. Nor a dictionary. 19. When Nadia, an autistic savant, learned to speak, she lost her drawing skills. 20. At 3, she had rivaled Vermeer. 21. Does diversity have a call number? 22. The librarian in the trees says quiet. 23. To go out on a limb. 24. No duckling is ever ugly. 25. Say a prayer for David. 26. In autism, categories do not wish to rule the world. 27. Rather, they attend. They procreate. 28. Like rabbits.
This is another one I need y'all to come off mute because I can. I mean, Lamar, can we come off mute for that?
That
Yay!
was great.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Y'all are brilliant,
Gosh.
one after another.
I know.
I cannot. Please, more.
Literally,
Yes.
literally cannot. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I just was trying to. Whew, all right. This is one to savor. Okay. Next, I'm trying to collect myself. I don't know if I can. We have Hilary Brown.
Oh, all righty, I'm here.
Okay, Hilary, I'm going to give a moment for us to get the spotlight, and then I am going to intro you. Okay, so. All right. Perfect. Thanks so much. Hilary Brown's collection, When She Woke, She Was an Open Field, 2017, is available from Head Mistress Press. Their work can be found in Queerly, Apartment, the Ocotillo Review, the South Carolina Review, A Disabled Woman's Reader, and elsewhere. Please join me in welcoming Hilary Brown.
Hi, I'm Hilary. I have dark curly hair, and I'm sitting in front of this tapestry with a woman on it. And I've got these red Sally Jesse Raphael glasses. And this poem is called Vigil, Disability Day of Mourning, 2019. No one has come to mourn us but ourselves. A sparse crowd, a thin reminder. We read the names aloud, the numbered tide of filicide, the murders renamed mercy killings by virtue of their victims. Our lives, you remind us, unworthy of life. And in the lists of names, always the unnamed. Baby girl, 7-year-old girl, 6-year-old boy, baby girl, 83-year-old woman, baby boy, 4-year-old boy, boy, 21-year-old man, 30-year-old man, 8-year-old boy, 21-year-old man, 5-year-old boy, boy, 16-year-old girl, 37-year-old man, 12-year-old boy, 68-year-old woman, 14-year-old girl, 9-year-old boy, 31-year-old man, 5-year-old girl, 63-year-old man, 83-year-old woman, 56-year-old man, 40-year-old woman, 5-year-old girl, 8-year-old boy, 3-week-old baby, 66-year-old man, 9-month-old baby, 69-year-old woman, baby boy. The never ebbing tide. And with each unnamed name, my throat grows hollow, my voice unvoiceable. Lay my body by the others, my brothers and my sisters. Light the candle, leave the calla. This is no place for speech, only for sorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Ooh, I like Ricky's comment, if language could dig a grave, this is it. Thank you so much. So next we have our two faculty for the evening. We are blessed first with Kay Ulanday Barrett, and then Lamar Wilson will be afterwards. I have the pleasure of introducing Kay. Kay Ulanday Barrett is a poet, essayist, and cultural strategist who has received fellowships from MacDowell, Lambda Literary. I'm sorry, just to make sure we have the appropriate interpreter pinned. I'm just going to pause. Yeah, got you. Okay, great. Kay Ulanday Barrett is a poet, essayist, and cultural strategist who has received fellowships from MacDowell, Lambda Literary, and just recently the 2022 Cy Twombly Award for Poetry. Their second book, More Than Organs, received a 2021 Stonewall Honor Book Award by the American Library Association and is a 2021 Lambda Literary Award finalist. Please join me in welcoming Kay.
Hi, everyone. Description: I am a brown, round, transgender person with glasses. I am 40 years old. I have a collared silk shirt on that's white with blue floral and a lilac hat. Behind me is a plant, and I am sitting on a black couch. Next to me is my sleepy brown lab hound on a couch with a blue and white blanket and tan leather pillow. Okay. The term is Sick for Sick. That's the title of this poem. And I just wanted to write a love poem that doesn't have to be romantic or sexual, but just love when sick people adore each other. Sick for Sick. Her body patched, swollen skin, hair flecks gone rogue, mismatched knees, ache knits, quilt throughout, curvature, a soft thing. They said, if we hum close, close enough that our chests touch, shared breath comes from belly up, that is not platonic. Now, breathe same air, nostril kinetic by way of brow cleft, pirouette of migraine syllables, twirl temples. Strain is something to lull here together. When nerves are ablaze, I'm told to be blanket. Lay my torso on theirs, abdomen to abdomen, core to core. Is this what a field does to a hill? Spill it with poppies. I wait on her skill. How they will sigh. The human body is heating pad, limbs, bonfire, flip sheets. You can't reverse sick. Today we don't want to. Chests pulse softest like. Come spring, come spring, we never do this again. There's only the memory of it. How her lungs cathedral, how I prayed there on the ledge of inhale, sternum sacred, coughed him, spasm luminescence, syllables stretched, muscled sacrament more than splay. Us, petals in overlap. Us, an ampersand on fire. Thank you so much.
I need to see at least 30 fire emojis in the chat right now. I am serious. I will not talk until I see at least 30 flames, all the flames, any flames.
Wait,
Okay, there's one. Okay, all right. When I get 29 more, we can continue.
I don't know
Thank
how to
you.
do
Thank
that.
you so much, Kay. We are going to move along with our next faculty member for the evening, Lamar Wilson. Thank you. Lamar Wilson lives with Erb's palsy, neurodivergences, and other invisible gifts. His documentary Poetics animates Sacrilegion, Carolina Wren Press 2013, and The Changing Same, a collaboration with Rada Film Group, POV Shorts 2019, which streams at American Documentary and airs on PBS. He teaches creative writing, African American poetics, and film studies at Florida State University and the Mississippi University for Women. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Lamar Wilson.
Hey,
Or
everybody.
the two and only. We don't have to be the one and only.
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So, goodness, I'm just still in the hill in the field. Like I don't know like how to move forward after I'm feeling what the hill was feeling, you know? Gosh, Kay. Okay, so my poem is called Disclosure, 2 words. Disclosure. Won't say anymore. In the states you and I love, I am a criminal. And by morgue, cell, or sanitarium, they will put me away. It's always my fault. After good night, John boy, I let myself loose like mice scouring a soiled kitchen floor. Blind but hungry beyond the good sense God gave us all to smell a trap. Loose booty, you big dummy, and scuttlebutt to an other, a darker corridor where the last piece of Havarti and dill was waiting in the form of a waiting man's flesh, sculpted like a magnum chocolate bar I had to devour. Round and round we go. And in the States, you and I live, his pretty teeth ensconced in golds, and his free and nappy hair, also criminal, his accipitral tongue keen to threadbare my ischianal fossa. Where we stop, nobody knows. He crawled atop this grotty bed, eyes blazing, high on the hype of his profile pic. Let the heat rend his magnum sleeve and
Thank you so much, Lamar. Good, we finally got this fire emoji in. So okay, I was gonna have to close this laptop. Whew. Please continue the support. Sometimes randomly, Lamar, I feel like I just hear someone say "Good night, John boy," just like randomly, and it's because you put that line in my head a couple months ago. So thanks so much. Can we please give a warm round of gratitude to everyone? We're not going to end yet, but I just want to make sure all the poets get a warm round of gratitude. Unmute if you feel so moved and holler, shout it out, whisper it out.
Incredible. That was incredible.
So
very, very good reading.
What
Everyone.
we're thinking about doing in the spirit of flexibility and pivoting and wanting to make sure that we can utilize our precious time together is we're thinking about opening up for some conversation. I feel like at readings, we kind of rarely get to do that. You know, we usually have to just sort of like do our 5 minutes and then, you know, try to catch a accessible Uber home. I'm not trying to like name drop, just whatever ride share. But thankfully we've got a little more flexibility tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a quote. Sheila early in the retreat alluded to some quotes that we'd be looking at for some conversation. So I thought I would read this quote. We could drop it in the chat as well. And then we could give chance for the fellows and the faculty to just kind of reflect on a particular quote, whatever it strikes you. And we can just kind of have a discussion from there. To ease ASL interpretation and CART, if people could use the raise hand function, that'll just give us time to be able to pivot and kind of keep track of who's next. It's not because I like to be like authoritative and like you're a teacher, you know, raise your hand, but it's just for accessibility. So if that sounds good to everybody, then we will go ahead. I'll drop a quote and we'll get started, okay? All right, good night. Okay, so the quote, this is a quote by Naomi Ortiz, who's a Zoeglossia fellow. My body, sorry, spotlight for this, okay. My body is the oldest story in the world. Part broken, part brilliant, all nuance. Disability offers a layer of perspective that is unique and profound. Knowledge of disability experience is political, social, sexual, and ancestral. To name something is to claim knowledge. Disability poetics reclaims the power of understanding our cultures and our truths. It has the ability to build bridges between communities and support mutual liberation. And we will drop that quote in the chat. And then we can throw some hands up and we can start having some reflections and some conversation. Tanya or Sheila, are one of y'all able to drop it in the chat, because I'm not quite able to. And Debbie, I'm going to pin you. Or actually, I should have had somebody spotlight you, because when I pin you. Okay.
I'm just getting my bearings. I think I can.
Yeah, no worries.
And I did miss the author of the quote.
Naomi Ortiz.
Okay, thank you. I've got it right here.
Awesome. And we can drop the link to the essay that it's from as well later, but we just want to get the quote up there for now. Okay, perfect. So this is what we're reflecting and what we're discussing. For everybody who just joined in, it's been an incredible reading, and we're excited that we have extra time to engage in some conversation with our fellows and faculty. If anybody is so moved, let's start hollering with each other. And perhaps because I'm not a co-host, is that why I'm not able to see hands? I'm wondering, since I'm a panelist.
Oh, yeah, we can't see outside the panelists.
Okay. And-
So
Well,
maybe,
we can, no, it'll show on the, I'll just pull up the participant tab on the side and we can see on the attendees. It should still show up. She,
well, I put my hand up because I'm a big chatterbox. But I was really struck, one thing about that quote and hearing the poems tonight that was really interesting to me is the way that disabled body in a sense becomes a source of knowledge, but it's also kind of in its nature pretty revolutionary, I feel like. And I think we heard that today, that it becomes a contentious source, but also potentially a source of liberation, because it reveals these fault lines of like how it's oppressed, how we're oppressed as people. And in some ways, I think that what I was hearing was sort of the joy of off-centeredness tonight. And I feel like that's really important. That sort of joyfulness of the body, that there's something in that quote that seems true. Carol, you're writing a lot. You should speak up, Faith.
It's a lot easier to write than to speak up, I think. I liked what you said is about the off-centeredness. You know, this, I've been trying to think about this as like, okay, well, what does the disability conversation, I mean, I feel like it's really important for other people to be listening to us. And it's like, what do we bring? And I think there is a way in which we bring this kind of integrity of the body and, you know, a perspective of seeing things from the side, you know, things that everybody else is ignoring and we're paying attention to.
thanks, Carol. Appreciate that. And I think honestly, if it's easier to come off mute for folks, we can do that. I just know we get so, you know, enthusiastic. I just didn't want 30 of us all talking at the same time.
I just want to point out that I just saw this thing that Tia put into here. Yes, and joy is resistance. I thought you should talk now. I just talked. So you have to take a turn.
Oh, I just wanted to flag also that DJ had said in the chat, I love Naomi and miss connecting with this energy. Yes, we do not dismiss our bodies. And I think Liv is also on cue, I believe.
I had Liz testing out the hand raising feature behind the scenes. So I don't know, Liv. I mean, you know, she doing a holler. Okay, yes, it was a hand test, Liv. I agree. I'm not trying to pressure anybody to speak or reflect.
Oh, yeah. I'm unsure, Saleem, can people that are not the panelists speak? Can everybody come in and talk off the mic, or the people who are not the panelists, can they speak, or is this a webinar format and they can speak through the chat?
Unfortunately, only panelists are able to unmute themselves and talk. And they can only communicate through the chat. But if someone does, of course, if someone has something, you know, really big they want to say, we can always promote them to a panelist and then just move them back to an attendee after they speak. But it's completely up to you.
Awesome. Kamisha has a great piece to offer. Kamisha says, I'd be interested in what the featured poets think about the quotes or poems they heard tonight. Yeah, about the quotes or poems they heard tonight.
And Carol has a great suggestion. Just before we get there, I agree. Could we make everyone panelists for the discussion? I think we do that. Yes. Jonathan, go ahead.
Hey, give me a few seconds. I got to do them all individually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you in advance.
You know, one thing I would just want to say is like, Kay, in your poem, there was so much joy. And I wondered, like, was that just what wrote? Was that a very intentional thing? How did you get to there?
I really don't know how I get to joy on a larger. That's not a skill I have. That's very tangible right now. Pero yun, for that poem, I just, I'm just so tired of witnessing love that's not like mine, with this particular partner I had with this metamor. I'm pansexual, and I was with my, at the time secondary, who was a sick, disabled, queer of color, femme. And we both come from migrant families. And I just thought we're always overwrought with shit, right? Like their body is always stopped at TSA. I am who I am. But there are these moments when we're in pain that just feel like this ampersand on fire. Like I just thought about what an ampersand does. It's the shorthand. And I don't know. I also am I don't know how many of you all feel this way. And I definitely get that from Elizabeth and Arianna's work, and just in general, also DJ's work, is that what I'm noticing is this pulling from what we consider nature or the cosmic, this constant drive towards it, right? And so for me, I just hear all the time that disabled people aren't happy that we're inspirational, or that, we don't deserve to be here, or whatever those messages are. Quadruple that or triple that, depending on if you're brown and or black or trans or whatever you are. So for me, I find it really necessary. Not all my work is joy, but for that, I just wanted elation. I was just like, what was it like for a sick, disabled, queer person of color to just love on a sick, disabled, queer person of color? What is that? And to use internal languages, because people who don't have chronic pain may not understand these sensations, and those metaphors aren't for them, like I'm code switching. And I think it's important how we talk about our love languages in our poems, in our dialectics, and how it's okay that it's not always for anybody, that people sometimes have to learn or experience it before they get to be on the inside,
That joy really came through in that poem.
A question that was posed was, what is code switching? Someone asked that in the chat, if you're able to briefly. Okay, from
my understanding and from my experience, for me, code switching is when you speak in different codes of acceptance, or codes of respectability, or codes of understanding. So sometimes I feel that disabled and sick people might have an internal language, like a lot of us say spoonies, or if my friend Jimena, who's a poet, is like, what is it? What did she say? She said, oh, my spine storms. I feel like that's a sensation that only certain people can really get. Like if I speak Tagalog and we have an inside context, me and another Filipinx person, that's one code. Then I'm my academic poet in another place. Then I'm a trans person using very trans, queer as fuck language. Those are all my different codes. And all of us, however we are in our body minds, have multiple codes. Sometimes we gotta switch them up for survival, and sometimes we can switch them up for joy, hopefully.
I saw, Priya, that you had a hand up. Thanks again for being like a million time zones ahead of us and being awake.
Yeah, so something that I learned today in this workshop is that how do you listen to poetry, or how do you to pay attention to smell or scent is a very important thing that I learned from today. So I was listening to my ambient sounds while the session was held, and it's currently 5:41. So while I was listening to all the panelists, it was lived, it was dawn. So the first light of the day and the first chirping of the birds when these poems were being read out. And that, when I heard this poem, especially on joy and love, and you have all of this happening at the same time, it creates something so beautiful. I just have a request. The next session that we do, can we please have a little more pause between two poems? Because all of them were so brilliant. And I was still recovering from them, but the next one had already started. So if you could just give a little more breather, just to revel in the poem.
My internet broke up at the end. Could that
I
last part-
love that suggestion. What she was saying was the poems were all so beautiful. Next time, can we have a little pause between them? I love that idea because often readings don't do that. And we made a decision to highlight one piece per reader so everyone would kind of pay attention. So maybe that's a great idea, Pinky. We could have a little moment of silence in between them to kind of reflect. I love that idea. I think that's a really beautiful idea because it's something we don't do enough sometimes. I was thinking the same thing. I just want to say everyone's poems were so intense and beautiful. I'm going to carry all these images around. And I love that idea. Very good. Thank you. How do I mute my phone?
I would love to hear from the other readers if people are comfortable about how they felt. I'm not sure what people's experiences are around Zoom readings during the pandemic. So just want to check in. How did you feel sharing your poem? How did you feel reading it? What did you notice? Because they were marvelous. Also, no pressure.
Okay, I'll share. First of all, I realized I forgot to do my assignment, which was to do a description. So I'll do it now. This is Lamar, and I'm a brownish Black person with shoulder length locks. I have on this white shirt that's got all these flowers on it, pinkish and reddish and purplish. And my new favorite, I'm holding my new favorite pillow. Isn't the most beautiful thing for those of you who can see it? It's the softest thing in my space. And it's a huge pillow with flowers that are like orange and magenta and sky blue. It's just like the softest thing. I have like thick eyebrows and a full beard, and I think that covers me. Where I'm from, they call me High Yellow. So I don't know if you know what that describes, but I'm from the deep South in Florida, and that's how I would be described. So, you know, that poem I read for a Zoeglossia / Cave Canem reading 2 months ago, as Saleem said, and I was very uncomfortable reading it. It changed since then because I'm always editing my poems. It might be different from what you all saw on the page, so I apologize. But tonight, reading it, I didn't feel, I hope you heard the joy, more so than the discomfort this time. I made myself read it again because I have to hear things in my body. I came up in a spoken word community as an observer, not a participant. So I started writing poems in Tallahassee, Florida in the late 90s, publicly reading them once. And then I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and was in the presence of Dasha Kelly, who's now the Poet Laureate of Wisconsin, and people like Dan Vaughn, people who were soon to be or were already on Deaf Poetry Jam, which was the place you wanted to be. if you were a poet. And I remembered how in my like in the small of my back, I would feel when they would read. And so for me, when I'm writing poems, I have to have that feeling in the small of my back. That is my muscle memory for when a poem is right inside of my body. And I didn't feel that until tonight. I don't think the poem is done, but I think it had something to do with the fact that I had been loved on and into by Elizabeth saying, love yourself, by, Kay, like all these poems made me sit up a little bit taller and feel like I could lean into the sound of my own voice and try to articulate what is probably the most traumatic event of my adult life. And that I am recreating and fictionalizing and purposefully refusing to disclose, purposely refusing to bring to closure for me, because I don't think that's something that I want anybody else to have, but me, because I live with it every day. And so I want to say thank you, because tonight I felt like I felt that feeling in the small of my back, that I was doing something right inside of the poem for the first time.
I wanted to hop in super quick, and Jennifer, I think you're next. Just how important that point is, and I feel like it's a question that comes up in lots of workshops, as far as how do you know when a poem is done, or how do you know when a poem is ready to submit, or how do you know if it's the final draft or you need another read. And I think it's really important to hear what Lamar just said about how a poem can keep changing. And some people would say they always keep changing. Some people publish a book and then they go back and change the poem, 10, 12, 15 years later. So I just think that was such a nice reminder about the evolution of our poems. Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer. I'm with my husband, Jim. We're eating popcorn. As Lamar speaking, part of my issue is I'm a well-known poet in New York, but I'm never invited to read. All my colleagues are invited to read, and I'm never invited. And I really started to believe that this is related to my speech impairment, which is really freaky because I'm actually a really good reader. But I just want to say it's so enlightening and strange and wonderful to be with people who all have disabilities, because in the real world, so many of us are forced to live our daily existence in a world that we're all around able-bodied people. And I know we all have different disabilities or different views or invisible or visible, but it's always a very nurturing experience to be around people who all have some kind of disability, and it's very unusual. So I wondered if you don't have to answer, but Lamar might feel more comfortable reading to this audience, or, that's what I'm thinking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Elizabeth, right before you chat, is it okay if I read a couple of the things that are in the chat? I know you're next up with the hand up. There's a lot of conversation that we're having about DJ's poem in the chat. So if it's okay, DJ, I'll read the comment that you just said that kind of sparked some of this. DJ said, before I read, I thought I might be dismissed as someone who was not communicating. So during it, I had to stay smartly managed. But then I felt exhilaration reading your responses. I loved seeing the lines that resonated and the echoing in the chat. And then I just want to read a couple of the responses. Liv had a nice thread. DJ, honestly, you have expanded what I thought was possible at a poetry reading. And then Liv went on to continue. It's always really something when a disabled person confronts their own ableism. And DJ, you broke down walls in my mind about what can happen in a reading space, like walls I didn't know were there. Plus it just being fully one of the most beautiful, staggering poems. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the love that's also going on in the chat box.
Hi. I had quite the process choosing one poem to recite. I wanted to choose one that I had actually memorized. That narrowed it down, and that was one that I memorized. And then I had in mind, like, if I have 5 minutes to say anything to a bunch of people, what message do I want to convey? And the only word that was on my mind was love, and then went right to that poem in my mind. So I'm glad I could recite it for you all. It felt great. It felt great to read or recite. And yeah, I'm really glad to be in this space among all of you. I actually had last night and this morning some grief come up, just realizing how often I'm not in a space that where I'm seen as I am right now, and it just reinforced how special and important it is for me to be among you all, and I really appreciate that. So thank you all for being here and for listening, and for I guess also reading captions if you're not listening, and supporting.
I find Zoom readings a little bit hard because when I do a reading with a physical space, like people move and make a little noise, although I'm getting used to this experience. And also the other thing is you have to look at your camera rather than looking at the people, which is sort of challenging. But I was happy to say stuff, so I'm glad I read.
Hi. In the thread of, the joy of reading to and with other disabled people, the poem I read in particular, I always have a hard time wondering if if audiences will be okay sitting through a list of the dead who haven't been given names. And I didn't really have that worry here because I knew that you would not want me to dishonor anybody by cutting them out. And I was really grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you for giving me that.
I guess if we're just unmuting, I wanted to say, well, I guess I can lower my hand now. So for me, this is the first poem that I've ever written. invoking disability in any capacity. And I have definitely existed within like the parameters of disability a lot longer than I've been conceptualizing it within that framework for myself. And so this is the first reading of its kind that I've even seen. And so I think what I really wanted to take away from this was a sense of, you know, who my contemporaries are and what the canon is that I'm writing into and what the community is that I'm writing into. And I have been learning so much since the start of this program about what disability looks like in poetics and how that can show up. And so it was really important to me when I was thinking about poems to bring into the space, to choose something that I felt honored that, or like honored that intention, or the intention behind the space itself and this kind of community. And so I wanted it to feel collaborative, and like I wasn't just, you know, absorbing all of this information and all this energy from all these other people, which I am. You know, I'm still very new to all of this and to the intersection of art and disability justice and all of that. But it felt really critical for me to choose something that made me feel participatory in that way.
Switch to you, Debbie. Sorry about that.
Hello.
I don't think you have to wait, Jason. I think you can go ahead.
Okay. Just want to say that all the readings have really been inspiring in a lot of ways, and I would say for most of my poem I read tonight was not very personal, but most of my life I tried to hide the fact I had a disability, or several of them, although it was pretty obvious. But now I've been writing about it in great length with a memoir I've been working on for 3 years, and I don't know, it's interesting and amazing in ways to see all the different people here who are doing the same thing and, you know, bearing their souls. It's pretty cool.
Hey everyone, I had a question for Carol. This is Liv speaking. Carol, you were talking about how your poem specifically was not a narrative poem, and you didn't want it to be in that type of reading. And as somebody who writes in the narrative tradition pretty specifically, like, how did you do that? That poem was so incredibly beautiful, and just I've really been thinking a lot in my own work about how, like, what would happen if I stopped trying to make myself understood, like, just not just by able-bodied people, which is kind of the journey I've been on, but just in general, even by myself. Like, what if I didn't sit down at the poem and like this is what this poem is going to be about, which is very much how I operate right now. And your poem was so incredibly beautiful. And it was one of those poems where it was like, I don't really understand what's happening, but I can feel it in my gut. And I don't really care what this poem is about. Can I just ask like what your process is, Carol, and how you put your images together, and like what what threads are you following? Because it was just stunning.
Thank you. That's what I want to say is just thank you. I feel like my experience is kind of fragmentary. And so my writing tends to go in that way. And I put it together kind of like collage, more like a visual artist, maybe, because it comes in fragments. That particular one came from a prompt that somebody gave, which if ever anybody wants, I could do it with you. It was like a double prompt. There was like a kind of language prompt, and there was also a visual prompt at the same time. And then I kind of, it was working with these preoccupations I've had, especially at that part of the pandemic and that stage of my mother's life and all. But a lot of my process is probably more, I tend to think of the narrative part as like me as being fragmentary. So I'm glad you liked it.
I just want to say, like, I have never felt more comfortable on a Zoom outside of my yoga group to be lying down. Can I just say thank you? Like,
Yes.
I feel so comfortable.
I say thank you too, and thank you for bringing up that it was okay, Lamar. It's like, I was trying to conceal that, but now I feel like I don't have to.
One thing I'm curious about, though, I'd love to hear anybody's take. And I know it's been said quite eloquently by other poets. I know there's like a Jim Ferriss quote that I've often heard about sort of not having to perform disability, to be part of disability poetics. But I'm really curious, folks, if you've ever had one of those moments where you've written a poem and you're like, people are going to think this is like a disability poem versus this is disability poetics versus this is a poem by a disabled person. Like, I'm just curious, anybody, if that sparked anything that folks want to reflect on. I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts.
Saleem, can you repeat the last part of that? You mean like you're sort of performing disability, but you're writing a poem, like where does the line come in? Is that what you're sort of saying?
Exactly, yeah. So I'm wondering if folks have had the difference between performing disability, it being a poem that's written by a person with a disability, and it being a poem for disability. So I guess it's those three things, and I could put them in the chat because that's a little clear.
I have a comment. I've edited anthologies like Typo. I edited Typo 25, which was typo, like a typo. 25, which was owned by my friend Matt Hendrickson. who unfortunately recently died. He was 44. He had bipolar and he died of an overdose. But I want to say two things. One thing is, after many years, and speaking about the hierarchy that Travis brought up yesterday, I think we need to throw that hierarchy or that concept or belief of a hierarchy out the window. I think it's pitting us against each other, and we all need to really learn how to believe and listen to each other. I know, for example, I know someone with an invisible disability. I'll never go through the pain they go through, and someone with cerebral palsy, even cerebral palsy with that speech impairment, will never experience what I experienced. So I think the hierarchy needs to go out the window. I think it's an ableist concept of separate, conquer. But I wanted to say, as an two things, as an editor of Disabled Poets and as a co-founder of Zoeglossia, when our first year, someone said, how do you define disability? And I said, disability is a self-definition. If you claim that definition, I believe you. End of story. I don't need your medical records. I don't need an explanation. And the second thing is, as an editor, I love to include disabled people writing about other things than disability. So for me, if you're John Lee Clark writing about sunset, that's great for me. I again think it fits into that. I said before, I'm a quote unquote second generation language poet, and I think it fits in too much to what able people want of us, that we have to write about our disability. We're whole people. I'm a mother, a Brooklynite, a pet owner, a teacher, a scholar, all these other things. I'm not just a person with cerebral palsy.
Yeah, I have that too, in the sense that I hate it when somebody solicits work from me and I feel like it's because they want me to give them something that has to do with disability. I'm always like, because I tend to write about it pretty erratically, but I've had a few times, especially in the last couple of years, because I'm associated with Zoeglossia, and I have one poem, one of the first poems I ever wrote about disability, Jennifer, that What You Mourn, it's always anthologized. So somebody will get in touch with me. They'll go, I love that poem. Can you send me some poems? And I get all freaked out because I don't really have anything else that's about disability that way.
Well, unfortunately for you though, Sheila, that's a really good poem.
But it's pretty.
That's a really good poem. So I feel bad, but
it's just funny. But I think that what I have really been struck by, though, is my sense of how a disability sensibility really is a revolutionary sensibility, because there's something about capitalist ideas of productivity and perfection that are really, I was struck listening to all the readings tonight and how beautiful they were, is they were sort of beautiful because they felt very honest and human in a way. And I feel like there's just so much in our culture right now that is kind of dishonest and inhuman. And I feel like disability can be kind of I don't know what the name of that tool is, but like a wedge or to kind of open up that, because I sometimes, I love that our definition in Zoeglossia of disabled was that it was a self-identification. But I'm often struck that I'll go into a class or something and everybody will say, oh, I have nothing to do with disability. And then you get to know them and they all really do. People do. And so I'm kind of, worried about the ways our culture keeps conquering and dividing, probably for the sake of profit or whatever. And also creating this idea of normate or normal that is painful. I spent the first 40 years of my life trying really hard to pass. And like Jason, you said, it was pretty obvious to everyone I had a disability. I mean, all you have to do is see my, I have a weird genetic thing. I have a different body type. But I mean, I was under such pressure growing up in the 60s to act like, which I think everyone was in different ways, to act like I wasn't who I was, just flat out wasn't that person, that it took me a really long time to start really claiming that framework for myself.
But that was very funny what you said, because I won't talk too much longer. But the class we had with Liv, it was me and Liv, and then Star went on. Adriana's like, I have autism, and the other woman was like, I had breast cancer, and the other lady's like, I'm depressed. Like, by the end of the class, you realize that, everyone's disabled in some way.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that information. Also, I just want to flag that Heidi said something hella brilliant. So above. I also think a disabled person writing about a sunset will bring a different poem about the sunset than an able-bodied person. And that might not be explicit, but it is a difference that is meaningful and important. And I think highlighting that furthermore for me, because I embody so many things, there are the same conversations happening in tandem, where there are non-binary people who do not identify as trans, and they're like, we feel erased by trans people. There are these conversations about what erasure, what perception is, what visibility is. And I think for me, these are so strange because we're living, for me as a brown person, a non-Black, light-skinned brown person, there are ramifications I face at the Medicaid office that somebody else who is cis, straight, and white, perhaps with the same disabilities, will not face. And I think that illuminates my work. I also think it impacts my livelihood, right? So as much as I don't want to say there aren't hierarchies, I do want to say there are tangible ramifications that happen distinctly to Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are disabled, to people who are flagged. As a trans person, as a trans mask person, I'm pinged automatically in spaces that are predominantly cis. So this isn't to erase or diminish people who are trans in stealth. This doesn't diminish very differently and or together people who are not perceived as disabled. For me, that is I think, white supremacy and ableism, right? The problem is their message and what those things in the empire limit us in those definitions, right? Limit us in what gender is or what trans is. So I just want to share that I feel, as somebody who is mid-career, entering their 40s, who has been writing poetry since they were a teenager as a trans disabled person, who is brown, who was poor and on government systems as a disabled person, that some of the access that I've received is very different looking than a white MFA disabled poet. We just know that. That's just what it is, right? That reality. So I'm not speaking on hierarchies. Perhaps I'm considering what the systemic implications are on our creation and who gets to determine if my poem is a disabled poet, a disabled poem, whose pressure is that? And why is that pressure on me? And do I choose to identify with that or I don't. In my career, I distinctly say, I mean, the poem that was published by the Rumpus is like, I use the word disabled, right? We all know this fiasco about very beautiful, marvelous poets that have various gradations of respect for wanting to publish on ableism, right? An anthology. And so these are the conversations that are interesting to me. I don't think it's about erasing people's disability. I think there's this internal structure that happens where I've witnessed and facilitated conversations where newly disabled people, new spoonies, disabled people who are not perceived disabled, people who for survival have to assimilate into ableism, right? For respectability or jobs to survive, are like, well, we're being erased by you. And I'm like, is it us that's erasing you always? Or is it really the larger ableist, like ableism and white supremacy that has forced you to bootstrap, that has forced you not to be your whole self? Because we're infighting now. I'm saying, welcome, let's give you an orientation, right? I just feel like I can be Filipino, but that doesn't mean I need to speak on all Filipino issues. I think disability is very similar. I think there's been this rush that if you're trans, you got to get a YouTube and now you're an expert, right? I think disability isn't that either. We're working from the I. When I was a baby queer, let me tell you, the shit I said was terrible, you know, like it's very different now. And sometimes I still say stupid shit. So, you know, we're growing in these things. I worry that people want to be experts right away, that we can't learn about disability, that we can't learn about our transness, that we don't have a lineage of disability poetics, that there have been, Leroy Moore has been doing Black crip hip hop disability poetics forever and a day, right? And it's just recently literary people have him in their mouths. So I just want to put that out there, that the implications that I've witnessed are very varied. Like also, who says what is literary and then what is cultural work? Like I'm in the middle. People won't say that Sins and Ballads productions that use poems are literary poetry. Is that because it's mostly done by Black, non-binary, queer, and femme sex workers? Maybe that's why, right? So those are just I'm spooning out, so I'm just chatty, just feeling the meds, y'all. Thank you. Sorry, ranting.
No, I loved it all. Okay. Thank you so much. The only thing I can add is that I'll just share this one little anecdote. So I was told by a friend who has had, air quote, more success than I, who also is disabled and is not out about it, I don't think, that if I were to, you know, and this was actually in a space for Black poets, I'll just say it that way, that if I, you know, that if I would just, you know, maybe not talk about that because I'm quote unquote more than that, I would probably get farther in my career. So it was sort of a line in the sand that was given to me by someone who actually says, and I believe her, that she loves me. And she wanted me to be successful in something I was fairly new in a community that was professionalizing in its nature, very much like this, is aiming to help us, those of us who want to be in academia, to be there, you know? And at the time I was finishing an I was like second year of an MFA, had not started my PhD, and was gonna have to make the decision because I'd walked away from a good job, as my mother would say. I was a journalist, you know, I was a leader in the newsroom. I could type as fast as anybody else, and I was hiding my disability in plain sight. Nobody talked about my hand, and I didn't make it an issue. I was very, very good at my job. So I walked away from my good job and was trying to get into another job. So it was very clear to me and to this peer that if you want to get a job, do you really want to only have the opportunity to be seen as a disabled person? Is that really the kind of poet you want to be in the world? And this was before Sacrilegium was published. And other peers were like, Lamar sure can sing. Maybe you should sing some more in your poem. So they were all trying to help me find myself, right? So that I could find what was my lane. And so these are people who still love me, I believe. But, you know, I've been kind of left behind, you know? They don't talk to me anymore. They've achieved the next level, you know? in the same way. And I'm good with that because I'm here with my people. And, you know, I've landed on my feet. And I did the PhD because I wanted to do it, because I wanted to learn about the things that I learned in my PhD program. Didn't need to necessarily do it for my career. I wanted to do it mostly because my grandmother wanted a PhD in her family and there had not been one. And she died in 2012. And so that was my motivation to stick in my program and to finish, to carry on a tradition that was very personal for my family, the family I was born into, not the various, you know, creative families that I had chosen. So to your point, Kay, I think we all have to make a decision about who gets to own us, air quote, and who we claim and who we choose as our kin, and be okay with the evolution of that or the devolution of that on the basis of how our lives change. And I am so very grateful at this new liminal space that I'm in between, you know, my last book came out almost 10 years ago. Thankfully, I have a film that has kind of kept me in the consciousness of the people who, you know, want my currency in the Black, you know, the Black poetry communities in which I operate, that they can claim me because, oh, Lamar has a film on a platform called PBS or whatever. But were I not doing that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they would think my poems are good enough to hang out with me. And unfortunately, that's what we are, Kay. But what I'm happy about is I'm writing stuff that is challenging me in new ways, because, like, you know, Arianna, this is all very new for me to really think about the way my brain is different. I'd always been so focused on my hand and all of the ways, the things that people can see, that I wasn't even thinking through the ways that my mind works differently. And so I've been looking for kin. And so the poets that, you know, in my class that we're reading, they're not quote unquote canonized as disabled people, but I'm talking about how they speak to me and help me to think through how my poems can work to articulate how my mind works differently. And so and that's what I'm trying to encourage in this space for all of us to do, is to find our kin, whoever they are, and hold on to them and learn from them and speak to them. I wouldn't even say sometimes for them, because you can only speak, I think, for yourself, but definitely speak to and be in conversation with, you know, the writers that speak to you, and give you access to some new ways of seeing and being. I mean, I cannot wait to see DJ's poem. You know, like, if this is how I'm feeling hearing it, how am I going to feel when those words are on the page or on whatever platform, you know, resonating with my different mind and my different brain? What kinds of ways is my consciousness going to be, or my, you know, how am I going to be expanded by what DJ does with those words inside of my eyes and my, you know, my mind as I see them that way. So I think that's what this 2 days, I can't believe it's only been 2 days, has given me, you know, is the opportunity to think about eschewing those voices that have told me, don't do that. That's just going to limit your possibility. You all are showing me the possibilities are boundless for me. So I don't know. I'm spinning out now too, and I'm not haven't taken my meds yet, so I better stop while I'm ahead. Okay.
I think one dream we've always had here in this community is having a real republic of poetry friends who really support and value each other. I know that sounds corny, but it's one of the great freedoms, you know, like having a bunch of poets you could just talk to and trust. I always felt like that was a huge part of what our dream was for this community. And Tate has their hand up, so I'm going to be quiet.
Oh no, that's okay. I thought that for a really long time, my only opportunity at community was going to be my graduate school experience, and that was horrible for me. I suffered from a lot of just discrimination based on disability, just in general. And Like I was told by professors, like, you know, you shouldn't pursue a PhD because, you know, you're not emotionally capable, like that kind of just bullshit. Because I, you know, just the invisible disabilities that I suffer from in addition to the physical ones. And I have been carrying that grief for like literally over a decade. I will never let it go. It is so horrible. But I just wanted to say how much of a privilege it is to be here with you all and getting to have this experience that I feel like, you know, I had the opportunity kind of maybe in like that super ableist academic system that, you know, I never like, yeah. But it's just such a joy. You know, and what's really funny is like, I've said it like 3 times already, like, you know, I'm really anxious, I get really nervous, that kind of thing. But I am not nervous to read my poem tomorrow. I'm really excited to read my poem tomorrow because everybody has just been so damn kind.
Gotta come off mute for that.
Yes. Everybody has been so kind and so good and so caring, and I feel so cared for in this space. And I'm just so happy that I got to listen to it.
I just want to say I'm still called HD for some reason. I went to a Zoom meeting where I wanted to spy on my ex-boyfriend, and I wanted him to know I was there but not know I was there. So I called myself HD, but you know, I'm really aghast. I'm really grateful, and I'm really aghast because people who are white and trans and people of color and non-binary and disabled are never allowed to have these real conversations. Because when I go to like meetings at the Poetry Foundation, I'm the only disabled person. They're so busy like pitting disabled and people of color and trans and non-binary queer people. We're never able to get to the real conversation of the problems of privilege and compulsory whiteness and speech impediment and visible disability. So this is just magical for me, magical. And I'm just so hopeful and grateful that people feel safe and that they're able to express differences or conflicts or whatever. That's all I have to say. With able-bodied people, you never really get to the core of intersectionality, I feel.
I'm a little behind, but I want to go back to what Saleem was saying.
Could I also pause just for accessibility? If our interpreters are going to leave, then we should also make sure that we're leaving about the same time, just for fairness.
Oh, okay.
So that's not to cut off, because we could always keep the conversation going. I just, for the public event and the recording portion, I just wanted to make sure that we're not, you know, having our after party and people are on like, what's going on, you know, without the ASL. That was really awkward timing, Carol. I was trying to slide that in before, so I apologize.
Can I say something? Or
of course.
Should I wait? I just want to say, you know, Saleem, when you were talking or about, you know, is disability poetics different or whatever? It seems to me like we just assume that people in the mainstream are writing from no position at all, like, the T.S. Eliots of the world or whatever, that they're writing from no position, but they're writing from a position too. It's just that they don't get identified as writing from a place, well, if you're disabled or if you're Black or if you're trans, you're getting identified as writing from that position by people outside yourself, as well as, however, those identities or those multiple identities you have affect how you write from inside yourself. Now, and I feel like there's so much ignoring of what people are bringing who are from the mainstream, and they act like that's like everybody, and that's neutral, and it's not neutral.
Truth. On that one, on that note, I wonder if we sort of like officially wrap up the recorded sort of public portion of this, knowing that conversations could and should, and I know will continue. So if that's okay, I'll sort of now start doing the like the Sandman, the Apollo, the sort of like gotta pull the whatever. So thank you to all, both within the space as well as the public who has joined us tonight. This is the first of 3 public fellow and faculty readings that we'll have this week. We'll be here tomorrow, Friday the 13th and Saturday the 14th at the same time, 6 to 8 p.m. Central, which is GMT -5. And we really appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll have, I felt like there was one more thing I was about to say. So yes, the hook, thank you. I knew it wasn't a cane. I was like, what was it that they pulled? But I mean, that's still like, whatever. So, oh, right. So just fellows, the note, I dropped a link in the chat for a survey if fellows are able to complete it, if you have the bandwidth tonight, if not tomorrow, and it'll be awesome because we'll take that feedback and very quickly be able to pivot and make adjustments for tomorrow. So especially if you had any concerns or things that came up that you weren't able to share within your group, or that would be an awesome place if you're able to take those couple of minutes and do that. We'll use that feedback for the morning. So thanks once again, and we appreciate everybody's support, and I think we will officially turn off the recording turns off when we leave. So we have to, this is like now, and you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here sort of message. All right, awesome. Looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow.
Have a great night, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Take care, y'all.
Bye. Thank you. Oh, Saleem, you did such a great job. Oh my God.
Thanks.